6 p.m. on Wednesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che, and these are the headliners for this newscast. With no hope of resolving our lawmakers' gridlock over redrawing the nation's electoral map, National Assembly Speaker Chung Yoo-hwa forces a direct referral of the bill. With plans like injecting a quarter of next year's national budget in economic management and easing regulations to boost investment, the Korean government expressed confidence in seeing a 3.1% growth for 2016. While on a humanitarian aid trip to the North Korean city of Najin, a South Korean-born Canadian pastor has been sentenced to a lifetime of labor by a North Korean court. He was accused of conducting religious activities to overthrow the regime. Korea's National Assembly Speaker has seen enough. He vowed to use his authority to ensure the proposed plan for redrawing electoral districts is put to a vote before the year is up. However, he has stopped short of using this power to force the passage of other bills. Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
National Assembly Speaker Chung Yoo-hwa showed his determination on Wednesday to wield his authority, forcing the direct referral of a bill to resolve the current gridlock over readjusting electoral boundaries.
It's a serious matter that rival parties have failed to reach a conclusion over the redrawing of constituency boundaries. Before or right after December 31st, I will have to take action as the electoral matter will be regarded as a state of legislative emergency.
Chung said the current situation could harm next year's general election because the current district system will be invalid from January 1st. This will be an unprecedented scenario in the lead-up to April's general election. If the parliament does not approve a new electoral map by the end of December, candidates would technically be campaigning in constituencies that may be scrapped or rendered invalid next year. Concerning the presidential office's pressure to vote on economy-related bills and the counterterrorism bill, Chung said he remains wary of forcefully exercising his authority.
According to Clause 85 of the National Assembly Act, the Speaker can put a bill to a vote in the event of a natural disaster or a state emergency. Considering the current economic situation, I cannot refer the economy-related bills to a vote at a plenary session.
The presidential office of Chung Wha-dae has been pressuring the Assembly to pass bills they say will help Korea's sagging economy and prevent terrorism threats.
During his press conference, Chung Yoo-hwa stressed that these particular bills need bipartisan consensus before they clear the National Assembly. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
After hearing next year's economic policy plans, President Park Geun-hye says Korea needs a contingency plan that now is a critical time for the Korean economy, particularly in determining whether it can take another leap forward or slump into slowing growth. And growth can only be fully supported with reforms. She went on to emphasize there are even more uncertainties to be tackled next year, including the potential U.S. Fed rate hike, which will add even more variables into international financial markets. According to the president, reform is the key to supporting balanced growth in such difficult times. And she also stressed the economy must be put back on track so that people can feel its recovery in the year 2016. She again called on lawmakers to proceed with reform bills to boost the economy. And the Korean economy is facing a tough year ahead, with multiple factors posing challenges from both at home and abroad. With that, private institutions are skeptical about Korea achieving its 3% range growth next year. But the government remains confident about this, promising to keep a close eye on low prices and cutting red tape. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Korea expects its economy to expand 3.1% in 2016. That's a trim from an earlier forecast of 3.3%, but still higher than the mid-2% range that a majority of private financial institutions have put forward. It says it will also evaluate the country's economic expansion based on current prices, offering not only real GDP growth but nominal growth figures as well, a move reflecting the government's drive to keep better tabs on deflationary concerns.
The nominal growth rate has to remain at appropriate levels so that corporate sales and household income can rise. That will in turn raise government tax revenue. With the Bank of Korea, we will do our best to reach the 3% range of real GDP growth and nominal growth around the 5% range.
To reach that target, the economy management plan for next year puts emphasis on easing regulations to boost investment and come up with new growth engines. The government plans to designate regulation-free areas in 14 different regions across the country, with the goal of fostering industries like biohealth, eco-friendly vehicles, and cosmetics. This project follows the state-driven program this year to build 17 creative economy innovation centers around the nation. Also on the agenda for next year is completing structural reforms in the labor, education, finance, and public sectors. But experts are skeptical as to whether the government will be able to push through such reforms with Parliament still deadlocked over pending labor bills.
Korea has general elections next year and the presidential election the year after. With political events like these, the government will face major opposition in completing the reforms, and they may lose steam.
Another challenge Seoul will take on is diffusing threats posed by snowballing household debt and corporate debt in the face of a possible rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve. The move will allow troubled firms to begin corporate workout programs before their deteriorating financial health becomes irreparable. Through these structural changes, the government aims to realize growth that can be felt by the public, as much of the focus this year was on regaining the country's economic vitality. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
From the Bank of Korea, we have fresh inflation targets for the next 3 years, noticeably lower than the previous target band. The new target comes after criticisms that the former goals were simply unrealistic. Shin Se-min reports.
The Bank of Korea lowered its annual inflation target to 2% starting 2016, scrapping its current policy of using a target band for consumer prices. The new inflation goal is down from the existing target range of 2.5% to 3.5%, set to expire as of this year. The target is considered the optimal rate of inflation for the economy, described by the BOK as being the most desirable level of price growth for stable economic expansion. Citing weaker inflationary pressure, the central bank attributed the trimmed target to the country's aging population, heightened price competition in exports, and weakening growth potential influenced by a prolonged fall in crude oil costs. All things considered, the BOK said it expects consumer prices to pick up an average 1.7% next year.
Lowering the target to 2% is a sign Korea is following the lead taken by developed countries like Canada and the UK, and shows its determination to achieve stable economic growth down the line.
Under the current target band set back in late 2012, the central bank had missed projections for consumer price growth every month for more than 2.5 years, sparking criticism and pushing it to put forward more attainable goals and assume responsibility. Starting next year, if the actual inflation rate deviates from the targeted 2% by more than 0.5 percentage points for 6 consecutive months, the top central banker will be required to hold a news conference to explain why. With the lower inflation rate, the central bank also brought Korea's potential growth rate down a notch, projecting it'll stand between 3 to 3.2% leading up to 2018. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The number of newly hired workers in South Korea fell in November with just over 285,000 added to the workforce. That's down from over 300 from each month since September. Also, youth unemployment rate rose correspondingly to 8.1%, an on-month increase of 0.7 percentage point. Statistics Korea attributes the fall in monthly employment to bad weather conditions, which reduced the number of jobs in the farming and fishing sectors. It added that available work in the wholesale and retail sectors also shrunk significantly. Domestic and foreign airlines operating within Korea will waive fuel surcharges on international flights for the fifth straight month in January on the back of low crude prices. According to Korean Air and Asiana Airlines on Wednesday, fuel surcharges are levied when the average price of jet fuel traded on Singapore's spot market is above 150 cents per gallon and waived when the price falls below. The price for flights in January has fallen to about 127 cents. All airliners will waive fuel surcharges on international flights departing from Korea throughout next month, regardless of the departure date. For domestic flights, fuel surcharges will fall to about $1 from the present $2. The first U.S. rate hike since June 2006 is expected within the next 12 hours. The announcement will likely come at the end of a two-day meeting already underway of U.S. Federal Reserve policymakers. However, with the hike comes looming concerns for emerging economies, including Korea. Kim Min-ji has this report.
It's widely expected the U.S. Federal Reserve will raise rates this week for the first time in nearly a decade. According to a recent Wall Street Journal poll of 65 economists, 97% said the Fed will probably raise rates from near zero. Adding more certainty to the data-dependent decision, the U.S. Consumer Price Index edged up 0.5% on-year in November, slightly above market expectations. The country has also posted improved job market data, adding 211,000 jobs in November. The jobless rate also fell to a more than 7-year low of 5% last month. Ahead of the Fed's announcement, Asian stocks rallied on Wednesday. Korea's benchmark Kospi climbed 1.9%, while Japan's Nikkei rose 2.6% and Hong Kong's Hang Seng rose 1.9%. This follows overnight gains on Wall Street as energy and financial shares rebounded on a pickup in oil prices. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 0.9%, the S&P 500 over 1%, and the Nasdaq rose 0.9%. In the UK, the FTSE 100 gained 2.5%, while Germany's DAX 30 added more than 3%.
Well, I think the liftoff is actually helping propel stocks higher. We've been waiting for this moment, it feels like, for a year plus, and it's finally here, and the economy can sustain higher rates.
But a rate hike may not be welcome news in general for emerging economies, including Korea.
Due to a contraction in emerging economies, it can pose a negative threat to the Korean economy as it raises the chances of capital outflow.
The Institute of International Finance says more than $33 billion flowed out of emerging markets in the third quarter alone, $10 billion of which left Korea's shores. Analysts say a rate hike may do more harm than good as further capital outflows coupled with slowing growth in China and uncertainty in emerging markets could spark a financial crisis. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea sentenced a Korean-Canadian pastor for life for attempting to disturb its social system. Lee Myung-soo was detained in the communist state last February during an aid visit to the northeastern city of Najin. Lee Soo-hun has the details.
A North Korean court has sentenced Canadian pastor Lee Myung-soo, who had emigrated from South Korea, to a lifetime of labor for crimes against the state. China's official news agency Xinhua reported on Wednesday that North Korea's Supreme Court held that for the past 18 years, Lim attempted to overthrow the North Korean regime and undermine its social system through religious activities. The court reportedly accused a pastor of joining a U.S. and South Korean-led human rights racket against the country by circulating anti-North Korean propaganda. Last July, Lim had given a press conference in Pyongyang admitting the subversion charges. But the admittance seems unreliable, as others who have previously been detained in North Korea have said that they were forced to make false confessions. Also, the pastor's family, in a statement released soon after the confession was aired, said that since 1997, Lim had only made humanitarian aid trips to North Korea. Canadian authorities have yet to make an official statement regarding the ruling. Ottawa cut ties with Pyongyang in 2010 and now has limited diplomatic influence in North Korea. Head of one of Canada's largest churches, Lim was held by the North in February when undertaking one of his more than 100 aid trips to the communist state. 이소은, Arirang News.
Turning to a different story now, NASA recently released a study that shows air pollution patterns around the world over the last decade. The changes in air pollution patterns are not random and are mostly related to human activity. Son Jung-in tells us more.
Using new high-resolution global satellite maps of air quality indicators, NASA scientists analyzed trends in nitrogen dioxide levels around the world from 2005 to 2014. Nitrogen dioxide is a pollutant emitted by automobiles, power plants, and industrial activity. Compared to the map 10 years ago, China saw an increase of 20 to 50% of nitrogen dioxide, much of it occurring over the middle west of China due to the rising use of coal for power. Seoul had the joint fifth highest level of nitrogen dioxide. Only Beijing, Guangzhou, Tokyo, and Los Angeles had worse air quality than the South Korean capital. But on a brighter note, Seoul's concentration level has decreased by 15% over the last decade. Three major Chinese metropolitan areas, Beijing, Shanghai, and the Pearl River Delta, also saw nitrogen dioxide reductions of as much as 40%. The US and Europe are among the largest emitters of nitrogen dioxide, but both regions showed the most dramatic reductions between 2005 and 2014. This was largely due to their efforts to reduce air pollution through environmental regulations. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
That's all from us for now. Thank you for watching.